Who's going to come up on? All right, guys, welcome back to the Colecast, episode 40. I nailed that one, and I know that because I just listened to my podcast with Greg to make sure that nothing inappropriate was said, because if we were to ever release a podcast with some hidden inappropriateness, it would probably be me and Greg.
Greg and I.
Greg and I. Just like the King and I. I feel like this song's going on way longer than it normally does. Anyway, welcome back to the Colecast. I am one of your hosts. I'm here with CEO and co-founder Nathan Brandt. We are going to go over a couple things from the Colecast launch. We are going to try to garner some feedback from you guys now that you have a couple episodes under your belt. And we are going to introduce a couple segments. So first of all, producer Evan, do you have somebody picked out for the giveaway winner?
No.
Was that on the episode?
Yeah, that was last week's.
That was last week's. So
we don't have a winner yet.
We don't have a winner because it's been 6 hours since the podcast was put up. So I believe the contest that we did was tag us in what you're doing in your shop, and we're going to take all those tags and we're going to give away one of our newer merch items, which is the press shirt, the first shirt we've ever sold with an actual press on it. So that's an update.
Pretty neat. I think the challenge was that you have to tag us, showing us your first hammer. First hammer in your shop.
Yeah. First hammer you ever owned. First hammer you ever owned in your shop. Tag us in that for a chance to win a free t-shirt.
If you don't own it anymore.
Oh, I have your first hammer.
The first hammer I made, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think you're eligible to win this.
Why not?
I just make the rules. I don't know.
Lord, I just make the rules. I don't know why
I didn't even catch that.
I just make the rules.
So that's the shirt we're giving away?
Yeah.
It's actually a sick shirt. I haven't even seen that.
That's a super cool shirt. Really? You haven't seen it?
So that's the back with the front?
He was too busy critiquing the rest of the designs.
Oh, the other ones, yeah. I really like the fact that it has one of our products on it.
Oh, that's super cool.
I feel like we should limit color options, though, personally.
You don't like the baby blue?
No, and here's why. It has nothing to do. I think people should be able to wear shirts of all colors.
Does that come in kid sizes? My kids would love those. I want some.
Coming soon? Now that you've mentioned it.
Yeah, we can do kid sizes.
I mean, the baby blue for Millie and the green one for Ollie. And
the blue and orange is
Teddy.
not great.
I love blue and orange. They're
It's like a rusty.
They're basically complementary colors.
It reminds me of what's the movie, the basketball movie with Will Ferrell?
Air Bud.
Nope. Anyway,
Kicking and Screaming?
nope, that's soccer.
What'd you say?
That's soccer.
No, what's the other one? What's the one you were looking for?
Air Bud.
No, Air Bud is
No, not
that's a
Air Bud.
dog.
What's the Will? What sport?
It's basketball.
Will Ferrell did basketball? Are you talking about Michael Jordan?
Semi-pro.
Yeah.
Semi-pro.
I've never seen
Yeah,
that.
they're called the
Didn't know
Flint
that
Tropics.
exists.
It's funny. They're from Flint, Michigan, but they're the Tropics.
Gosh.
But yeah, that's what the like blue and orange always reminds me of. All right, so no, the reason I think that we should discontinue so many colors is because every time I type something into Shopify, I have to filter through
literally 9,000 SKUs.
every variant of t-shirt that we carry.
Yeah,
Because for
that's not
some
gonna
reason,
change.
all of our shirts are tagged under every product that we sell. So if I type in, like, somebody's on the phone, hey, I want to buy some squaring dies. Got you, bud. Type in squaring. Before I can select squaring dies, there are every t-shirt and every variant and every size that we sell. So that's why I think we should discontinue so many different color options.
That's a feature.
Because customers are waiting on me and their time is precious. But all right, so make sure that you tag us in that. At the end of this, I might.
So tag a picture on Instagram of your first hammer.
First hammer.
First hammer you've ever made.
First hammer you've ever owned, I believe.
First hammer you've ever owned. I
First
owned
hammer
a
you ever owned.
hammer a long time ago. I was a little boy.
Hopefully you still own a couple hammers.
I have a few.
Good.
My kids lost most of them.
Yeah.
Good.
The regulations are pretty loose on this.
Yeah.
Except I'm not allowed to participate.
Correct.
That's
the
only
rule.
regulation so far.
The only written rule.
All right.
And honestly, you can lie about it being your first hammer if it just
have Millie
looks
apply.
like your first hammer. Millie's not winning.
She just got a hammer. Ollie and I just made his first hammer. All right. Keep us moving.
So at the end of this episode, maybe I'll do another giveaway. Who knows? Depends on if I'm feeling it or not. News and events. So we actually have like a semi-schedule this time, guys, because we're trying to be legit. News and events. Biggest thing happening around coal right now is the KA cell is getting built, kind of finalized. We're running power.
KA cell's done. Power's done.
Yeah.
The last puzzle piece is getting in place today, and Greg's getting spooled up on the build process. Him and I have been working throughout this week, and he's killing it.
He's already grabbed me and scheduled time for me to learn the build process as well this week.
Should be good.
That way, push comes to shove, I can build a KA. I don't know if anybody wants that KA that I built, but
well, the biggest thing that I think we've learned is pre-assembling some of the sub-assemblies.
Yeah.
So he's going to be pre-assembling cylinders, and basically the heart of the machine's a cylinder. Mm-hmm. So getting those pre-built by a skilled technician like himself, then it's Legos.
Yeah.
And that's going to be slick.
You know who loves Legos? Landon. That's gentle foreshadowing of what may happen later on in the episode. So, we've got the KA cell building on. We got a couple updates on the self-contained that maybe we don't want out in the public necessarily for dramatic effect, but essentially we're still rolling. We've got some updates. We've got a path forward on cylinders,
which is a big deal because the first ones we were using off the shelf, and that was a big selling point for us because we could go and buy off the shelf components.
Yeah.
But we decided to, after we learned what we did from the KAs, we were basically like, oh, we can build these.
Yeah.
It really took a lot of the, what's the word I want? Like it seemed a lot more complicated than it really was. Mm-hmm. So we were going to be building this, basically the hammer from the ground up. The only thing that we're not manufacturing in-house is the steel and the motor. And from there, it's all in-house.
Yeah.
Every single part's getting machined by us or by, we've got, Magna, one city over that's just a world-class machine shop for some of the big stuff that we just literally can't handle. Yeah. 100% made right here in Indiana. That's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, even down to like a lot of the fittings that are going on to it.
Fittings.
We are going to have to do.
Yeah. We aren't building the bolts. We aren't making the bolts.
No, not the bolts. I'm talking about like the bronze fittings that he's messing with today. And even our hose supplier for all the internal hoses and stuff is 2.5 hours away right outside of Chicago in LaPorte. So it's amazing when we set a goal of we want as much American-made manufacturing.
Yep.
We want to provide for local communities. We want to be involved to as high of a degree as we can. That sounds hard, and it is in a lot of circumstances.
Yeah.
But this project has almost been necessary to go with American-made manufacturing. And I'm sure that we could go on a website and post, "Hey, we need this part. We need 500 of them. Whatever." But we don't want to build 500 hammers at a time. We want hammers to be built to a specification that requires somebody who knows what they're doing to make it. And so we want, obviously Logan is machining a lot of the first parts, and then Nigel and Shiloh will take over. And then it's going to get built by Greg and me. Mm-hmm. There's not going to be 85 hands on this machine. Mm-hmm. It'll be 5. Josh will do some welding, a little bit of welding.
Yeah, he'll be handling the fabrication.
Yeah.
Then it moves over to the assembly cell that we just built for the KAs, and it's going to.
But the thing about the welding and the way we have the new frame set up is, I don't know why I did this. The way we have the new frame set up is that fabrication is like cool. The layout of it is I don't know if Logan took the time to think about how Josh was going to fabricate it.
He did because
he made it so easy.
Because we fabricated the last one, and it was there were 3 parts of it that were like, how do we index this? Mm-hmm. And there's no way to like, we were welding on the cylinder housing, and it's like, I have nothing to go off of.
Right.
There, because we've got this big arch in the back, and then so we learned a lot through the first build, and then he was able to basically tab and slot the process, which means we've got mechanical fastening of the components on top of the weldment. And yeah, it's going to be a delight to fab, but the CNC or the machining processes are pretty intense, but nothing that breaks our system. We tried to do a 350 pound, 2.5 inch plate flywheel. That got nixed because we were going to have to spend like $500,000 for a CNC lathe that was capable of swinging that. Yeah. But we pivoted and figured out a new solution. And I mean, gosh, man, it's the road to happiness.
Right. And it's also led us to making it, like you said,
Yep.
as much here as possible,
Yep.
you know? And, you know, going back to, like you said, the things that even aren't made here in Anderson or they're in Markville, right?
Newcastle. Magna's in Newcastle.
All of those zip codes get weird out there where you don't know what city they're in. And
Yeah, I mean, they're in a cornfield.
Yeah.
Easily the coolest machine shop I've ever been in.
I've not been yet. I don't get invited to fun places. But, you know, I got to go to a NOMA meeting recently and talk to a couple guys from Alro. And one of the biggest questions that was being asked by these fabrication shops was, what's going to happen with the tariffs? You know, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And Alro was like, you could tell it wasn't a sales pitch. They were like, oh, we really haven't even talked about it because we source as much American steel as possible.
I think my biggest concern with the tariffs isn't going to be because everything that we use is U.S. manufactured, except I think there's one tube that we have to buy from a Canadian pipe manufacturer. Mm-hmm. My concern with the tariffs is going to be how do the U.S. steel manufacturers respond? Because I think they kind of have two paths. They can either say, we're going to maintain our pricing because that's the incentive for U.S. purchasers to buy what we make.
Yeah.
Or the part I'm concerned about, they're going to say, well, we'll just raise the price because now this is the new standard. And then it kind of backfires. So we'll see.
If Chinese steel goes up 25%, I can afford to go up 15 or 20%.
Well, they'll go up 25. Yeah. You know, because then they're saying they're selling on quality, but the reality is it's like availability. Like, what can I get?
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. This is every bit as bad as the COVID issues we had where, you know, prices were jumping 300% and stuff. So it'll be definitely interesting to walk this out as a manufacturer. I talked to a couple guys that I know that have started small businesses that they import and resell product. Mm-hmm. And every single time I talk to them and how successful what they're doing is going, I feel like stupid for starting a company where I was like, yeah, I'll just build it. You know, it's again and again and again. So I get we're definitely in the minority saying that we're going to build everything ourselves. It seems like it's a lot less profitable, but you know, the real profit is in the skills training. We are participating in making sure that these skills don't go away. And great. That's a legacy worth pursuing. So I'm very excited about the KAs, very excited about the power hammers. They really have called us to a higher level on the machining side and the capability side and even from the like process side, like how are we going to build these parts and in what order? Mm-hmm. So that's been really cool. Happy to finally find a use for the jib crane that I bought. Just one of them. One of the jib cranes. So, lots of good stuff in tow. I think we're in a as a nation we're in a difficult spot, but I think locally we're in a strong place to do what we're doing.
You know, you said that your biggest conundrum or fear, I don't know exactly how you worded it. I didn't listen, but that U.S. steel prices would or steel manufacturers would just raise their prices to match. I think, and maybe this is me for one time not being cynical, but I think my biggest worry and my biggest doubt is U.S. steel manufacturers will maintain their prices and their demand will go up because obviously we're not importing as much. And we've, over the past 40, 50 years, decimated our infrastructure and the ability to keep up with that kind of demand. We are very close to Gary, Indiana, which was a city literally made by steel workers. It was organized as a town by the what's the guy's name?
Can't help you.
Michael Jackson.
You started this story.
He's from Gary, but the guy that started, he essentially and correct me if I'm wrong. I watched 2 videos on this like 6 months ago. I got in the world's quickest rabbit hole about Gary, Indiana, but it's essentially started by his workers were like, hey, we need a place to live. And he was like, okay, I'll give you land. You build the house. So they just started making tent cities. And then eventually they were like, hey, we can't live in tent cities. And so they kind of started a union, and that union became the government. And then they had all of this kind of infrastructure that was built by people only because there was a steel mill there. And then when everything happened with the industry, that's where all the problems with Gary came. It was because all of their money dried up.
Well, same thing as Anderson.
Same thing in Anderson.
We dealt with here when GM pulled out.
Exactly. So my concern is that they have these, honestly, some of them are gorgeous buildings. There's churches, there's schools, there's steel mills that could house millions of dollars worth of business, but they've been vacant for 50 years, and now the buildings themselves would need so much work and take so much time that there's no way to build it back up to meet the
that's the whole concern with the threat of a global war. It's like when we went into World War II, we were in a low military place, but we had manufacturing capability. And it's like we'll give 5 tanks for every 1 tank is what Ford said, right? With the Panzers. All I know is we basically, World War II was won by pure grit on the Soviet side, but B, by the manufacturing prowess of the U.S. And it left us in a position post World War II to basically we owned the market worldwide. Everywhere else was bombed and decimated.
And they used all of their resources
to
protect themselves. We weren't in a defensive state.
Correct.
So we could pick and choose, and we
not
could say,
to the extent,
we want to go and be offensive here. We want to go and be offensive here. Where other countries had to say, like, we need all of our resources because not only are we being on the offensive, but we also have to be.
But then the Allies then started looking to the U.S. to supply them. I mean, we were building. Ford began building tractors for Britain because they were out of food, and so we were put in a position of pure demand, and our industry responded in kind and just ballooned into this massive version of its original self. And so we're now in a position where I think we have a high level of military strength per se, but we don't have that backing of length. I was listening this morning, they were talking about they're running simulations on potential global conflicts, and they all end within 10 days. Because there's literally nothing left. Yeah. There's a nuclear conflict and everything's over in a minute. B, there's literally no supply to reinstate ammunition, tanks, bombers, aircraft carriers. Maybe Elon Musk could spool up a gigafactory. I don't know.
It would take him 3 years, but after it,
Right. And, Ford was in a position to respond and begin making naval ships, and, Willys began making Jeeps. I mean, there were small manufacturers in place, but at that time, small manufacturers were like 5,000 workers, right? And the scale and the capability of the working class at that point, that's a vulnerability at a level I can't comprehend. But, I think we do our part and we build it where we can, right? So, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that applies to, we are very blessed to be able to work inside of a community that we came up around and supplying blacksmiths and is super fun. Some of the other industries that we've been able to make contact with, like there was a fastener manufacturer that makes like 4-inch fasteners that contacted us about a few presses, and when you're first contacted about that, it's like, dude, that is so far outside of the realm that I want to do it, but I can't.
Right.
And I think the past 2 or 3 months since all this has been the hubbub, it's for sure bit Logan, but it really has shown me how quickly, I can make a 300-ton press.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I want to? No. Is that coming to market? No, don't worry. I don't want emails about people saying, what's up with that 300-ton press? But obviously we're all paying attention to the news and what's going on. But one of the things that really has struck me was at scale, yes, I don't think that it's going to be very easy for these big, like the actual steel mill who needs thousands of employees. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be very easy for them to scale to 25,000. Mm-hmm. What will be easy is for Coal Iron Works to scale to 20 workers instead of 10.
Sure.
And if we have 15 local businesses that scale from 20 to 30, and we have 5 businesses that scale from 100 to 200,
sure,
that's where I think the strength in the infrastructure comes from. MoFab has like 100 employees-ish. We have 10. Barnett Bates has like 10. Mm-hmm. Some of the other companies that we work with around here, Chesterfield probably has 7, 8.
Chesterfield's probably got 30.
Okay, so they're bigger than I thought they were.
Yeah, there's more going on in there than you think from the outside. Magna's probably got 50.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just there picking up those anvils, and I was surprised. I mean, they've got a nice mix of young and old working side by side, guys getting trained up in the trades. Even
Markerville. Lumber.
Oh, yeah, they've ballooned. They're massive.
They've cleaned out all of that area, that weird house next to them that I thought was their junkyard, but turned out it was a house.
Well, and they built that huge shop. Yeah, they're doing
so I think that's where the strength, get sentimental for a second. That's where American Endurance comes from, is small manufacturing that can move from 10 to 20 people. And in 50 years, if we get some sort of contract with whatever, making some big, huge press or power hammer or whatever, we might get up to 100. That's not necessarily our dream or our goal, but if that's where God takes us, that's where God takes us. And I think that that's where American manufacturing needs to focus. And I don't want to take the wind out of anybody's sails that works for, say a U.S. Steel or a big conglomerate like that, where they know there's 5,000 people on the payroll. What I want to do is I want to add wind to the sails of the guys that work in 2- and 3-man shops. We just had a guy that came down that quit a company recently because he was tired of. So he lived in Columbus and he was driving to Cincinnati, and then he found out the technician from Cincinnati was driving to Columbus every day. So he called his boss and he was like, "Why are you doing this?" And he goes, "Oh, we can charge customers more if we have to call an out-of-area technician. So we schedule all of our calls as out-of-area technicians." And he said, "So I quit."
Yeah.
And this is a big company, and I'm not going to say their name. So this is like an international, huge machining company. And so he quit. He now has 3 employees. He has 1 on-site guy that goes and travels and works on CNCs and stuff. He himself does the same thing. And then he has 2 guys that work out of his house. Mm-hmm. He has a barn on his property that they work out of his property, and they can clock in whenever they want. They can work as much as they want. They're paid a flat rate plus per part, and they get a bonus on fulfillment time. Mm-hmm. And he was telling me all this, and he was like, "Yeah, pretty much I can do this because I don't have overhead."
Right.
When you're working in small places, I know that we talk about our overhead a lot, and we do have overhead for sure, but we don't have the overhead for like IU.
Well, no. Right. Or Ford or GM. Yeah, absolutely.
So, even like the ball canning factory that was in Muncie, we don't have that kind of overhead, or even the locomotive factory that's over there now, the railroad factory, which I don't know exactly what they do. I've been told they paint. I've been told they
do.
assembly.
They do full train builds.
Oh, okay.
And then they do restorations and
so
stuff.
When I'm told they do certain stuff, it's because they do everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, but they're building trains from the ground up, which is cool.
That is cool.
I mean, it might be like 1 a month.
Yeah.
But yeah,
well, how many trains are being ordered these days? That's
idea.
big money. So I'm going to fix my train before I replace it.
Yeah.
We're talking about $1 million PO there.
Probably more.
Yeah.
I don't know. How much is a train?
I don't know. Look up how much is it?
How much is a new train?
Yeah, how much is a new train?
What's that place called? Perfect Rail?
Something like that. Rail Perfect Rail.
Freight locomotive costs around $3 to $4 million.
Oh, you weren't far off.
Yeah.
Passenger trains cost $5 to $10.
Like an Amtrak?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man. So my neighbor in Cicero, Gary, he worked at Amtrak in Indianapolis, rebuilding vintage and tear down. He was in the like salvage department and in like the 60s. And so he's got some stories.
I used to live on an Amtrak track. Like literally like on the track.
He was telling me stories of like ripping double-decker train cars apart, and that was really cool. We'll get into that sometime. Anyway, this is supposed to be an intro.
Yeah, this is supposed to be an intro. This has been good. So anyway, yeah. So just to kind of summarize what we talked about, I know a lot of people out there are paying attention to the news. They're paying attention to the tariffs. They're paying attention to politics, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from that. But find the hope where you can. Find the opportunities where you can. That's kind of where you can't decide what's going to happen in your life. You can decide how to react. And this is that on a grand scale.
Sure. A lot of opportunity.
There's a lot of opportunity coming soon. And I didn't plan for this to be where the conversation went, but you know, if you work in a small shop and you're afraid of these tariffs, you know, be encouraged, find the opportunities. If you can scale from even 50 employees to 75, you know, it'll take a little bit of budget, and you'll have to work on your infrastructure a little bit, and it's going to be challenging. There's going to be some times that you work until 9 or 10 o'clock at night and have to come back at 4 a.m. Like, that's all stuff that we've done. And we'll probably have to do again. Like,
for sure.
Especially in the summer when it's not 10 degrees and we have working furnaces now. But you know, all this is going on, and there's a ton of opportunity out there. And I think that we're in the prime spot to take advantage of it, and whatever you believe America is, to take that back. Because I think the one thing we can all agree on is we've lost our way in a lot of places. And globally, I think we have. I think every country probably feels this way right now.
I bet China doesn't.
No, dude, China's rough. They're hurting right now. They're bad. They've lost like 1% of their population for like the past 10 years.
Well, so is Japan. We were just talking about the population decline globally. I mean, that's why I had 5 kids. What are you doing? Pull your plow, bud.
Brother, I bought a house so I can fill it. All right? I bought a house so I can fill it. But you know, they're in a pretty rough spot too, and they're going to have a labor shortage, I think, starting in like 2035, which is crazy for a billion person population. That's the word I was looking for. Maybe not India, because India seems to just.
I don't think India's population has declined at all.
No, it's surpassed China, so it's at least holding steady. But anyway, back slightly on topic as a conclusion there.
Evan's in a catatonic state.
Be encouraged. Take opportunity. Take heart. Reach out to people that work in similar industries. See how you guys can strengthen each other. You know, like, get weird, get creative on how you can come up with solutions. I think now is the time to be really aggressive with everything that we've tried to do over the past 10 years. It's 10 years now, but
somebody's here.
Over the past 10 years. Hi, Lily. Yes. Okay.
We'll be fast. Haven't been so far, but we'll hurry up.
So, you know, get weird, get creative with with everything that you're doing, and strive forward. You can't let fear hold you back. You have to, you know, keep moving forward and progressing. Keep the train rolling, the $3 million train. Keep
5 to 10 if it's a passenger train.
5 to 10 if it's passenger.
So if you would have some more kids, you could have a passenger train. That's what I'm getting at. Let's keep this going.
Let's keep this going. I got a meeting. All right, so we're going to go over a couple questions, and then we're going to get into interviews with Landon.
You want to pause?
Yeah. We should go ahead and break.
Let's take a beat. Let's take a beat. You can have your meeting.
Take a beat?
Yep.
All right, bye. All right, welcome back from that very quick break that we just took. moving on to the next segment, we are going to answer a couple questions from a couple of customers.
All right. Are you ready for that?
I am ready for that.
All right, here we go.
Okay, so
I've got it right here for you.
he's got it right here for you. Somebody has asked us, hey, Colecast.
Hey, Colecast. Love the podcast. I'm a small-time bladesmith working out of my garage with just hand tools and secondhand equipment. Nothing fancy, but I make it work. I've started selling some of my work locally, but I'm running into a few roadblocks. My questions for you are, 1. What are the best low-cost upgrades I can make to improve efficiency without breaking the bank? 2. As someone still using mostly hand tools, what's the one piece of equipment you'd recommend investing in first? 3. Do you have any advice for someone balancing forging as a side hustle while still working a full-time job? Thanks for all the inspiration. Keep up the great work.
Why'd that sound like a question? Keep up the great work? Is it?
I paid
Should
you
you?
to make that.
That was on the clock. That was on the clock. For sure. All right. Was not expecting that. little thrown. So the first question was, what are the best low-cost upgrades I can make to improve efficiency without breaking the bank? So my first response to that is, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you into the 12-ton coal ironworks press. I'm just kidding.
It's really specific to what you're making.
It really is.
Let's say this kid is Corbin. He's going to shows. He's making S-hooks and tripods and shepherd's hooks. I mean, you don't need a press to do any of that work.
No.
I would look at what you're making. And, you know, like when I was making the axes, when I'm making the axes, but when I started making the axes, the first thing I thought of was I broke it down into steps. So first thing I'm going to do is heat them. Then I'm going to punch them. Then I'm going to what? And I made literally a list on a whiteboard. And as I did it, I moved them around for better efficiency. And at this stage, I have everything dialed to where I know it takes me 7 minutes to heat the billet from cold. I know that it takes me 90 seconds to punch it and drift it to number 3. I know it takes me 6 minutes for second heat because I stack them up. You know, like I break it down at that granular level. And then I look for things that I could either move the machines around to make it faster, or am I missing a tool? You know, so I was struggling when I was stamping. So I brought in the induction, and I'm using a pancake coil cast so that I can set them on and localize the heat for my stamping operation, which took me from it was like 1 to 2 every 20 to maybe I'll have a failure 1 every 50. So I greatly improved. You need to define what you're trying to improve.
Right.
So it's like when I was when I was first blacksmithing and I was making S hooks and shepherd hooks and stuff, an improvement for me was I asked my dad, who was my steel supplier, because he would buy steel at cost from the shop he worked at, if he would pre-cut my lengths for me. That was a massive improvement because I was using an angle grinder and a 4-inch cutoff wheel. And then I stopped. So then that set my length. So all my S hooks were the same length. And, you know, he would bring me a bundle of steel that was all pre-cut. That was a huge improvement. So I think, you know, if you're a knife maker, I don't know how to help you. If you're, if you're looking to, okay, that's a good point. I think the other thing is, and this this is based off of what I just said, was we are doing this now with the power hammers. Look for opportunities to leverage who you have around you. Maybe someone you know can pre-cut the steel for you. Maybe someone you know can drill some holes for you. Maybe somebody wants to come help you in your shop from time to time and learn, you know, get a little experience in the trade. Like,
I mean, that's why I'm here.
Exactly.
I would come over.
You would come and help me.
And help. And I fell in love with it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And I fell in love with you.
Oh.
Where's our sound effects, Evan? That should have been like a.
You should play like the spring, just like a totally unrelated, like a totally unrelated sound effect.
That'll work.
That works as well.
That'll
That's
work.
what I got on deck.
All right, so I will go a little bit more general than you, and I will say that in my experience, if you're looking for low cost upgrades that will improve efficiency across the board, two things. One, invest in just a couple of hand tools to be able to wire your own electricity in your shop.
Oh, buddy.
Hold
Can
on.
of worms.
Hold on.
Can of worms.
So buy a couple, and this is going to be kind of counter what I followed up with. Get good stuff. Klein, like insulated screwdrivers, like things like that. Because if you are going to take ownership of running electricity in your own shop, make sure you don't electrocute yourself. On par with that of buying decent tools for installing electricity in your own shop, spend the time watching YouTube, watching This Old House, watching and learning from the people around you, and get well in tuned with how electrical works in your shop. The number one thing that I get from, now I feel like I say the number one thing a lot from like customers, but is customers calling about power requirements for presses or whatever they're installing, induction forges. And then they will say, I've got an electrician coming out, and are you guys open Thursday? If I have any questions. It's like, yeah, we're open Thursday. So if you don't know what's going on in your shop and you have to have somebody come out, you have to hope that whatever equipment provider you have will respond to the call while the electrician is at your house. And also electricians are very expensive, especially if you get them overtime or on weekends where most of them are working throughout the week on dedicated jobs. Getting somebody out to your shop on weekends and after work, that's overtime. So I think that's a very good way that is a lower cost over time, is if you really start to take ownership of the electricity in your shop. And then number two, buy cheap tools. Go to I just went to a covered bridge festival, and there was a guy that just had totes of screwdrivers and hammers and whatever, and he was selling them for $2 for a hammer. A set of pliers was $5, whatever. Buy those. If you need a bandsaw and you're not sure what kind of bandsaw you need, buy a cheap one first. Because the worst thing that you can do is go out and spend $5,000 on a brand new tool that you think is going to revolutionize your shop, and then you use it twice. Buy the cheap one, and if you end up using it and breaking it, that warrants you spending the quality money on something bigger. You know, we do have a lot of customers that buy presses after they built their own, and they're like, hey, I built my own. It cost me $900. Now that I use it all the time, I'm more willing to invest in it. Whereas before, I didn't really know if I was going to use a press a ton. Yeah. Especially guys that come from a background of power hammers, right? There's always kind of been I'm a press guy, I'm a power hammer guy. And so if you get a power hammer guy that thinks he can do something with a press, well, he's got a $20,000 power hammer. Does he want to spend another $10,000 on a press? Well, he figured that out by building his own. It doesn't work exactly the way he needs it to, but he still uses it all the time. How much more would he use a press that works exactly how he needs it to? So I think my two bits of advice were, you need to be able to understand your own electricity, because that opens up the opportunity for you to move your equipment around your shop and wire it where you want it at any given point. Yep. And then number two, buy cheap stuff and break it, wear it out, learn the function of it, how often you're going to use it, and how often it applies to your process. And if that's a lot, spend the money on a good one, right? Porter Cable and Bauer and all the stuff they sell at Harbor Freight will burn out in a year. But that's okay, because you're getting it for a quarter of the price. You're getting something from DeWalt or Milwaukee or other brands, and then you at least are comfortable with spending the money on DeWalt or Milwaukee because you knew you used it a ton. Now it's like, okay, well, I use this for 3 years every once in a while and it burn out. Cool, go back to Harbor Freight and buy another one. Sure. You're not going to use it a ton. So I think as far as if we're just talking about efficiency in general, that would be my two pieces of advice.
I don't disagree with you. I think your point actually about the electrical is an important one, because we deal with a lot of people that electricity is a black box to, and it's a real hindrance to their ability to really understand, maintain. I mean, when I built my shop at home, the first thing I did is I ripped all of the electrical out. I put in a new panel. I put in everything. And I put a drop everywhere I want a machine. And when I want to move something, I go to the hardware store and I buy $100 spool of wire, which is annoying. But I'm not paying $1,400 to have a guy come out every time I need to move something. That actually is a good point, because now it's taken me probably 15 years of tinkering with electricity to where I feel really confident. I mean, you know, I've now wired everything from a household 110 outlet to you know, a 480 transformer and all that kind of stuff. So, but that has been a huge tool in my toolbox for the entirety of my career, is understanding electricity to a point where I can safely install, or if I can look at something and say, I'm not comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, I understand my limitations with it. And, you know, so I think, I don't disagree with that at all. And on your other point, you know, probably my favorite buy of 2023 was a $26 Dayton bandsaw at a local auction. I now use it every day. I was moving my dryer in my house where I had to move the electricity. And I needed to modify some ductwork. And it was like, I went out and used my little $26 bandsaw. Yeah. And it's amazing. I also own one of the largest bandsaws in the state, and I never use it. So, you know.
It's pretty sweet, though.
But it's good. Probably going to be a mailbox. Probably going to be a mailbox. For sure.
Yeah. So I think that would be my advice. I think you were taking it more like specifically like, well, I don't know what you're working on. How do you get more efficient? But if you're just starting out.
Well, okay. So I think the generic version of my answer, though, is look at your process.
Yeah. No, and I agree.
Steps.
I think that's something that Andrew Larson does a really good job of understanding his process. Yeah. You know, you got a couple old timers that I know have just done it the same way.
Sure.
And they're doing like production forging. They've done it the same way since 1965 and they've never questioned it.
Sure.
But what they don't tell you is that they take the say tongs, they take the tongs out of the forge. They know they're going to turn to their right to do this on this anvil. And then they know that they immediately either have to turn right or left. Well, the next stage of the process, let's put that machine to the right. And it becomes tribal knowledge. So when you walk into the shop and it's like, why is that machine there? And they're like, because that's where I go. Right after I get off the anvil, I go right there.
Yeah, it's more like it's not talked about kind of thing. You know, that was the common sense reason. Like I put it there because I need it there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, why would you question me? But what?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
So understanding your process is huge. And I think we talked about it with Corbin, actually, on when you go and you learn how to make something, and then you go home and you don't have any of the tools that, you just learned how to make it with. Right. So not only when, you know, say you take a class and you go, don't just pay attention to the product, but pay attention to the process. Pay attention to what tools you use. Pay attention to what steps and why. There's also been a couple times that I've learned how to do something, and after doing it 5 times, it just makes more sense in my scenario to do it differently. That doesn't mean when that teacher goes back to his shop, he's doing it wrong. Maybe he doesn't have the same setup I do. But paying attention to your process, I do think is very important. That's something we talk about a ton, even in large scale manufacturing.
Oh yeah.
Is paying attention to your process and what steps make sense one after another. So
yeah, order of operations is important.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah. That's part of SOP. We're just going to throw out terms. All right. So the answer to that one is
I wanted to be in the shop.
Somebody's not getting enough attention at home. Do I need to have a parent-teacher conference? This time not about your drawings. So that's going to be the advice. Pay attention to your process. Own your electricity.
What's the next question?
And then buy tools and break them. Number 2 is, as somebody who uses mostly hand tools, what is one piece of equipment you would recommend in investing first?
In an angle grinder. I would say an angle grinder transformed my life.
Yeah.
I remember the first angle grinder bought, I paid $16 for it at a flea market. And I didn't, it changed my life. That's what I'm going with.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Cole Ironworks 12-ton press. No, I'm once again just kidding. I actually very much so agree with that. I think one of the things that has hindered me in making is my uncomfortability with angle grinders. Now, that is A, because I didn't own one for a long time, and B, the first time I ever used one, the disc exploded. So
You'll have that on the big job.
But I will say that using an angle grinder, the portability of it is way easier than taking
it's
it over
just
to a
like,
bandsaw or
dude, I
chop saw.
can shape the metal. I can wire wheel and clean up old stuff. I mean, we were talking about what's your first memory. I have a memory at, I don't know, 6 of using a wire brush at my grandpa's. We were rebuilding some piece of equipment and he had me start wire brushing all the parts. And it was a paddle switch on like an old school Craftsman one. And I was so scared. But the other thing that I would say is if you're primarily using tools in a small setting, probably the second most transformative tool is a little welder. Get a little Harbor Freight, get a Beaver. It doesn't matter. Whatever. They're pretty expensive. In my home shop, I have a little Lincoln that I got, and it's a flex core. Get 035. If you're going to run a 110 wire welder, get 035. Don't get anything bigger than that. Or 030 is also okay. You want that smaller wire diameter because you get it can melt better at the amperages you have available. A little wire welder allows you to make jigs, fixtures, top tools.
Right.
You know, you were talking about do it cheap, do it quick, have a little bit of stock. I would say have some like 1/8, 1/4 flat bar on hand at all times to make spring swages, to make little racks and holders. I have, I don't know, like 3/16 by 1 stock that I keep in my shop. And I make tables, fixtures, tong racks, hammer racks. It's the handles for all my top tools, all of my stamping stuff. Like I am constantly like, I'll be doing a process, a drift bolster, right? I need a handle. I'll weld it on. That handle sucks. I'll weld it on the other side. That handle's great. Like super quick, totally transforms your process. If I didn't have that, I would be screwed.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And that goes with what I was actually going to say. I think you beat me. I was going to say organization.
Sure.
So some sort of stock organization, tool organization, because the thing that hinders, I think, a lot of people, hobbyists working in their garage is because it's their hobby. They don't want to add any extra work to it.
Sure.
And everything gets messy and everything gets cluttered. And then you spend 30 minutes finding the tool that you're looking for, investing in just a little bit of organization. Transformative, as you would say.
Yeah.
But I think to one up that, invest in a welder and make the organization that works for your shop.
Yeah, absolutely. Racks and, you know, the little piddly bits that get cut off that when you're at a hobbyist level or you're just thrifty, you know, I don't want to throw that away. So I have struggled in every shop with the you know, cut off material organization. You know, we struggle with the school, we struggle out there. And at the industrial level, it's way cheaper to just only stock full length bars. Everything else goes in the scrap bin. But when you're at a home shop, you paid for every inch. And so, you know, make up some little cubbies and, you know, you need some pipe and make a little cubby rack for it. You drop all the stock and it's organized and it's available. You need to
practice a butt weld. Like you don't want to use your fresh stock for that.
Butt weld.
You don't want to use your fresh stock for that. So yeah, you can use your scraps. You can use your end cuts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
and you'll become a better welder.
Yeah.
You know, it's all in there.
Yep. It's all experience.
Yeah.
And there's some knowledge, like technical stuff.
But it's on, pretty much on YouTube at this point.
Baseline, be good at welding is a great skill to have.
Oh yeah.
Even if it's
if you can be an electrician and a welder. You're going to have a good day.
You're going to have a good day.
Yeah.
And then, you know, number 3 is plumbing. You want to be able to run electricity and weld while you're standing in water. So yeah, I think organization and a welder and a angle
So
grinder.
we started Cole Ironworks with a, are you going to do something about that? Freaking guy.
It'll stop.
We had a tombstone welder, 220 volt stick welder. We had 3 angle grinders between the two of us, and a drill press. And Andy was down in Tennessee at this at an ornamental shop, and he called me and he said, "Dude, we've got 6 guys here. We've got tombstone welders and angle grinders, and we are bringing in $1 million a month doing ornamental railings." It was all powder coated, so it was off site. They got a drawing, they fabbed up the drawing with their angle grinders, and they weren't even using a bandsaw.
Yeah.
They would zip disc the parts, they would lay them out on the table, tack weld them, fit them, weld them up, powder coat them, install them. And they didn't do the install, they just delivered to the job site. Yeah. And they were doing mad dollars. And so, I don't know, that is a super rudimentary start for you to be able to do anything that you want.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I agree. Number 3, do you have any advice for somebody balancing forging as a side hustle while still working a full-time job?
It's hard. I mean, I think you have to decide what you want to do, right? It's like, are you starting a business?
Yeah.
Because, if you are trying to do it as a business, you have to go at it from a completely different angle than if you want to be a competent blacksmith, like that being your goal, right? It's like, when we started Cole, I would work, I worked my day job, and I would go out after we put Millie down, and then I would work from 7 to 2 a.m. every single night. Yeah. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'd spend all day Saturday, and then usually some on Sunday. And, every holiday that I had off, I was in the shop. Yep. And I would just work all the time. And it was because, and that's the hard part about that, is when you decide you want to start a business, I found it really frustrating in the beginning because the thing you want to do is do the work, and you don't have jobs and nobody's interested and you have no commissions and you have no direction and you're just like, what do I do? Right. And I think that is the stalling point for a lot of ideas, because it's like, I want to start a business, I want to do things like this, but then you need the work. You need the cash, you need the idea. Like I really needed people to tell me what they wanted. And so I traveled around and did, tractor shows and threshing shows and things like that. I would do, railroad spike knives, S-hooks, garden hooks, L brackets, shepherd hooks, tripods. And I would make a few and I would take them and then I would make them in front of you. And that was fine. I'd make some money and I'd make enough money to cover my material and fuel. And maybe I could buy an angle grinder for $16 on the table at the flea market. But when we started taking on commissions, that was the hardest thing, was finding the work. And so I think a couple guys that I know that are successful at this point, they went from taking commissions and custom work to they make what they want and they offer it for sale. And I think that's a better way to do it. But I think there's a third option, which is you have to get some base level competency. You have to have some tooling capacity, like we talked about, or capability. And then you can go and look for work at a bigger scale. And that's kind of what I've started doing now, is looking for the best made, the bespoke post, I want to find a couple companies that they're going to have a consistent workload for me, that, I have the baseline skills and I have the equipment and I know how to solve that problem for them. Right. But I've built that over time doing other things. And so, I get the frustration. I think you have to take a step back and really make a decision about what you're trying to do.
Yeah, 100% agree with that.
But if you don't start, you're not going to even know what questions to ask. We started Cole doing ornamental ironwork. Yep. And then we were like, hey, let's build a press. And then we built a press, and it was like, well, let's just build presses. Yeah. And so then that turned into a whole new thing. But if we hadn't started somewhere, Andy got us some work leveraging local community connections. He knew a fab shop. They needed a little help. He knew a couple guys in town that needed some welding done. And, you just network. Talk to your mom, talk to people at church, talk to your community, see if you can fix things. One of the best things we did was we made a mailbox post, a beautiful mailbox post, and put it out front on Main Street because my mother-in-law lived there. And I got some interest from that. It was hit by a driver shortly after.
Very
shortly after. But,
yeah.
I think it doesn't have to be complicated. But I totally, that is definitely the huge mountain to climb when you're just getting started is what am I going to do?
Yeah. So I think start out with a vision is a good.
It's helpful, but you don't know. But it's so hard because it's like you don't know what your vision is.
You also have to pivot your vision.
Yeah, sure.
A lot.
It doesn't need to be so granular, exactly day to day.
Yeah.
But it's like maybe you'll say, I'm going to go work on my skills every day for this block of time and kind of build that into as I'm working on things and sharing and talking about it, then I'll start to get a little bit of work in the door and I'm going to do a really good job at that. But maybe that focus point can be building competency and capability in your tooling and your shop setup and all that kind of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. If that's the goal of somebody who has a current side hustle that wants to turn it into a business, I think that's obviously you've done it before. That's great advice because you've been there. Mm-hmm. As somebody who took a side, it wasn't even a side hustle. It was just something I enjoyed doing, and I've been able to make a career out of it thanks to you. I think that yes, if you make the decision that you want to turn it into a business, follow Nathan's advice. If you take that hard look at yourself and you say, I want this to be my relaxation. I want this to be my way out of everything going on in my life.
Whole different
ball game. And I will tell you exactly what I tell my nephew when he comes over and starts playing video games. It's supposed to be fun. If it stops being fun, stop. Yeah. I'll unplug a PlayStation. I don't want to hear you screaming and yelling and in maybe 5 or 6 years when he's old enough cussing. I don't need that. If that's your way out, if that's your enjoyment, you don't see guys going to the basketball park and, well, okay, I take that back. People get in a lot of fights at the basketball park. But,
bad example.
Bad example. Yeah, really bad example. But if you go out to your shop and you're really frustrated, you're trying to get this project done and you start losing motivation because it's just not fun today, go inside. Don't burn yourself out in the name of a hobby. There are so many great things, and we live in a wonderful age where you can absorb your time in so many other ways. If your hobby is causing you a ton of stress and you're in the shop just frustrated and mad and angry, you are now counteractive the entire purpose of being in your shop.
For sure.
So know when to put your hammer down is kind of my first bit of advice is if you take a look at it and it's supposed to be your side hustle because it's fun, allow it to be fun. Number 2, as long as it pays for itself, you're good. There's a lot of guys that get really wrapped up in I saw this guy selling it for $250 and I saw this guy selling it for $400, so I'm going to make mine $325. And it's like, at a hobbyist level, let's be honest, your work is not as good as a professional. Mm-hmm. They can sell it for $300 because it is worth $300. They have put $300 worth of time, effort, materials, knowledge, and expertise into that project. If you make a tripod and it costs you $20 in material, maybe we'll say $10, $15 in coal, sell it for $50, sell it for $60. I'm not saying you go to swap meets with 100 of these things and start undercutting people that do it for a living, but I'm saying if your grandma calls you and she says, hey, I'd really like this for my front yard, don't try to make it this big thing where, okay, well, I have to charge this much and I have to do this. And like finances is the hardest, most frustrating thing about life. Don't turn it into that. Have fun with it.
If it's a hobby.
Right. If it's a hobby. Yeah. So I think, and I don't want to take anything away from what you're saying. These are 2 completely different viewpoints. If you take the hard look and you want to make it a career, great advice. But if you just want to do it as a hobby, dude, have fun.
I think that Derek Melton, and when he came and gave his demo during the Hammer In, which is on this podcast earlier, you should go watch it if you haven't. It's great. Mm-hmm. Very well done. I really appreciate his perspective because it is a side hustle for him.
Yeah.
He's got a day job. He's got kids. He's a runner and all the things.
He is literally everything.
And I think he had a great perspective of like, I know what my capacity is. I design my products within that constraint.
Yeah.
I sell them at reasonable margins and I make enough money to put my kids in college.
Yeah.
Like that's a great way to go about it. Cause like for me, it was, I want to make this tool. So I'm going to need all this equipment and do all these other things. And I want to do it at an industrial scale and so I'm spending money up front. That's not the way to start a business. Mm-hmm. And Derek's looking at what he has and saying, what can I make with this? And then he scales it. I mean, now he's got induction forges coming out the wazoo and a plasma table and all of these. Yeah, he's got all these things that's building additional capacity, right? But I think his perspective was really healthy and very balanced, which is very Derek Melton of him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that we could go on forever, but I
don't think so. I think it's good.
I think that's good. Yeah.
Concise it.
It's like, hey, I also think that that's good advice for somebody seeking to do it professionally as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree.
Do it within your capabilities. And if you stop having fun, maybe you don't want to do it for a living because it's only getting worse from here.
Yeah.
Your problems don't get smaller if you start doing it professionally. But
that's for sure.
This is an ancient tradition that we're upholding. The blacksmith, Logan said it very eloquently the last time we talked to him. The blacksmithing was the architect, he was the engineer, and he was also the artist. Everything had to be functional and beautiful. And so we're upholding that, but we also live in a society that we're upholding tradition. We're not necessarily putting I don't know how to say what I'm thinking in my brain, but because every time I'm like, okay, that's a sentence, it's like, nope, that's true. You are like feeding families. Oh, well, that's not true. It is like, it still is a much needed.
I think I know what you're saying. Like people have other options, right? It doesn't need to be forged ornamental ironwork, right? So, maybe it doesn't have the same level, but it's like food, right? Mm-hmm. Like people are gardening now, not because their food availability is scarce per se. Mm-hmm. They're doing it because they want to uphold the tradition and they want to be a participant and they want to be capable and competent. They want to learn.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, no, forging isn't the only option. You could 3D print that little wall hanger.
Yeah.
That's not the why, right?
It's not as fun.
No. Well, to Chris, it might be.
Some
people might be. But you then, like, I'm redoing my kitchen right now and I'm thinking very carefully about, like, I want to hand make all of the handles on my cabinets, right? It's like, I want to touch that cabinet in 50 years and say, man, that's super cool. I made that. That feels good.
Or in 20 years say, I can do better.
This sucks.
And redo it.
Throw them all away. Melt them down.
No, I mean, like I made Mandy a shepherd's hook a couple summers ago. And
it did take you a couple summers to make that.
No, that one is still laying back there. That one is still laying back there. But I made her a couple summers ago and it's already like, I think it's time for you to have new shepherd's hooks. I think I can do better. I think they will look better. And so I understand that too. It's like you're redoing your kitchen in 5 or 10 years. If you're like, well, I got really into handles and hinges for 6 months and now I can do better. It's like, that's also super cool. So, anyway, if it's not fun, don't do it. If it is fun, let it kill you.
Dear God, I'm sorry, guys.
I don't have a better way to put it.
All right. So what's the next on the agenda?
So we are going to fade into interviews with Landon and Corbin, and then we will be right back with a final question, which will be very quick.
Who is Landon and Corbin?
Landon is our new, I don't even know what to call him because he does a little bit of everything around the shop. He's very helpful. So right now he is in shipping and paint, but he also builds all of our induction forges because our capacity requires it.
So he's the production gnome.
He also he started in assembly. You guys all find all this out in 5 minutes, but he started out in assembly and he's moved around. He has the driest sense of humor. He will probably make a ton of jokes on this podcast that none of us know are jokes. Only he knows are jokes, and then he will laugh at himself while listening to this back.
No, he doesn't laugh in the moment though. So you still don't know it's a joke.
True. He is one of the funniest people that I've ever met.
But you don't even know
But
it.
you don't know he's funny until you start to kind of understand his humor. Corbin is he's just a good shop hand to have around. He's our safety guy's son. He wants to make a career out of blacksmithing and machining. He is very enthralled with anything that is metal, anything that moves, anything that takes a little bit of thought process behind it. And he's currently our intern. He on Friday will be his last day in CNC machining. And he will be switching over to work with Logan to start.
Well, he literally told me this morning that he's done with his CNC internship and he's moving on to the next one. So he lied to me.
He lied to you.
We should extend his CNC ship now.
I can call Kyle live on air and get him in trouble.
I like that. That feels good. That feels right.
But he's gonna be with us all of next year, and he will have probably a senior project, quote unquote, to be able to design, manufacture, and present to his school. So I think a lot of internships when it comes to high school is like, did he show up to work? Was everything clean? Did he meet your standards? And I'm really excited to kind of take the view of like, what did he learn from this? Present it. How is this impacting what he wants to do for a living?
Mm-hmm.
So
it was a good fit.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited for him, and I'm excited to have him around. And once again, we're not nice to him in person, so we can say nice things about him now.
Sure.
Let's switch into that, and then we'll be back with
more after the
one
break.
last question. Yeah. Da-da-da. And now we are here with. I tried to do an NPR voice, but it doesn't work. I just think of is it Portlandia that does the skit where the guy's like, and now we're here, we're gonna be listening to the smooth sounds.
I don't think he knows who either of those guys are.
No.
Nope. All right. Well, anywho, we're here with Corbin. Corbin is our intern. Before he was our intern, he was just kind of our shop boy. Anything that we needed help with around the shop, we could always call Kyle and Corbin. Kyle is Corbin's dad. And they'd come over and they'd help us out. So we met Corbin when he was 14, 13, 8.
12.
You just held up 8 fingers.
Oh, sorry. I'm at 12. I'm at 12.
We don't let Corbin do math on the floor. He's not accountable for counting. We met Corbin when he was, did you say 12?
12 or 13.
12 or 13. And then he came out to the first hammer in that we did after that when we built the school and spent all two days. We did 3 days the first year, right?
No, it was 2.
2 days?
No,
Okay. So
I was only there one day.
spent the whole day, whatever. I am trying to, for dramatic effect, talk about how quickly you fell in love with blacksmithing, Corbin.
Yeah, yep.
Okay, so he spent the whole day in the little roped off area that we had, to the point where during demos we had to cut it. Like, Corbin is part of the reason that we have a separated demo and a open forging day. So he came, he fell in love with it. Like I said, his dad's our safety guy, so he started bringing him around. We introduced him to a few guys at the IBA, and has since joined the cahoots with those guys and taking classes and lessons from Kurt, become very good friends with Kurt, and now goes on adventures with guys, 6 times his age. All of his best friends are near retirement. So we're just going to talk to Corbin about what got him to fall in love with blacksmithing, what he looks forward to doing with the skills that he's currently learning, and wherever else it might take us. So, Corbin, give us a little introduction and tell us a little bit about yourself, because I just gave most of your backstory because you're a child. There isn't much of one.
Yeah, but you're kind of wrong.
Okay.
The first time I was here, he just brought me by because I was with Dad, and he was, I don't know what he was checking, maybe fire extinguishers or something. And I walked back to the sewing room, and I saw Nate just forging hammers. I just stood there for like half an hour just watching him. You remember that?
I didn't know you were there.
Oh, anyway. And I didn't really want to leave. And then the second time I came to meet Will Stelter.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, the hammering. And then I came like every week just because I wanted to. And then we went to Sofa. Me and Dad went to Sofa for 2 days.
Yep.
To come hang out with you guys. But then all the IBA guys were there, and they invited me over. And Noah, we were in the competition together, and I got first, he got second. That's how we met.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kurt told me that he's in Atlanta, which is about 30 minutes from me. And then I go up there. Now I go up there every day, but I started going to his classes. But he's become basically a grandpa to me, and that's been great.
So what was it about Nathan forging? Let's take it back to that first time. What was it about it?
Do something so like just be able to move metal. I didn't know you could move metal like that. I didn't it's like clay, but you just can't touch it. You know, I have.
It's astute observation.
I've watched you.
Yeah. But
show the hand. You've got a big old burn on your hand right now on the back of your hand. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not the worst one though. The second when we made that big cross, that was the worst burn I've ever had.
Yeah. You'll learn fast.
Yeah.
So the fact that, you walk into a room, you see somebody moving metal like that,
mm-hmm.
and from not your words, but from the description, you were enthralled. Mm-hmm. And then did you go home and start watching blacksmithing videos because of that? Were you already a little bit interested, or did Will come across your YouTube algorithm just for funsies?
Before I even came here, Dad said, I'm working with this new company that builds stuff for Forge and Fire. And then I started watching that, and I was like, wow, this is cool. I want to be a knife maker.
Mm-hmm.
But and then he told me there's a super famous knife maker that's coming to Anderson, and they said you should come meet him. And that's when I met Will.
Super famous is a little bit dramatic.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a stretch.
But I tried to make knives. I got my first forge that Christmas, and I got an amble.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I met the IBA guys, that switched knife smithing like way out of the picture for me. And tool making is like where I'm at now. I love it.
So what was it about tools that beat knives? Because there are knife makers in the IBA. Liz, we give knife makers a lot of crap.
Like Steve.
But yeah,
he's a tool and knife maker.
There's a lot of guys that make knives. And Kurt, somebody at Sofa last year challenged him to make a knife, and
he made one in one heat.
One heat, and it wasn't like a one heat, like, oh, that's a knife that'll do. It was a better knife than most of the guys out there forging were making.
Yeah.
So there are guys that make knives, are respectable knife makers. What was it about tools specifically?
Making a tool to make another tool.
Okay.
It never ends, really.
So the idea of the longevity.
Yeah.
Okay.
A knife, you make it, and then you can just carry it and cut stuff, basically. And more, but tools like hammer. There's like 18 different tools you need for just one other tool. And then that tool goes on to making other stuff. It's just an on and on process that I love.
So what was the first time what was the first tool that you forged that kind of gave this feeling to you? Because it took me and Nathan made axes, we made hammers, we made a whole bunch of stuff, but for whatever reason, it was like punches, drifts, chisels, like actual hand tools that I was like, oh, this is super cool because they have such a variety of uses that you're not just going to use them for one project. That's kind of what caught me in, was the versatility of what we were doing. What was the first tool that caught you that got that bug inside you?
Tongs. The first time I ever met Kurt was here, and I had no idea who any of these people were. It was Paul, Kurt, and Steve King came. I forget what it was for, but it was for like that.
Was it the hammering?
No, it wasn't the hammering. It was like when people were set up out here with all the booths and stuff.
Oh, when we did the maker market.
Yeah, maker
Okay.
market.
Yeah.
And he had tongs almost already forged, and he let me rivet them and everything. And I was like, wow. And I was mainly using railroad spikes at the time because I lived by a railroad track. And we made them 5/8 bolt jaw tongs. And I was like, wow, I can use these all the time now. And
For
I was
legal
like,
purposes, I need you to say that you did not take railroad spikes from the railroad track.
no, I was giving them.
Okay.
From the railroad track.
Railroad track employee.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
It's not unheard of. I've heard of people gathering railroad spikes and then like conductors being like, oh, or not conductors. What are the guys that work on, I don't know, the railroad guys? They'll be like, oh, you need more? Here's all the ones that we're replacing and throwing away. Like,
I know a dude that's actually giving me like a whole truckload soon.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't need all that, but sure, if you want to give it to me.
it's illegal to pull them out of the railroad track. It's not illegal to gather them if they're
in the
on
state
the
of
side.
in the state
It
of
is?
in the state of Indiana.
Yeah, because it's railroad property.
Really?
I was told
Good thing I've
differently
never done
very
that.
recently.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't pull up and take railroad sleepers, put them in the bed of your truck. Just because they're laying there doesn't mean they don't belong to them.
I need to look that up later.
Yeah, I was told very differently like recently.
You were lied to, Francis.
Anyway, when I went to Sofa, I was like, wow, these guys have a ton of tongs. Like Kurt pulled up. This is after it was before I got there. He did the anvil demo on the hammer, and he pulled up after to the IBA, and his whole truck. He has a rack on his flatbed, and it was like loaded with tongs. I was like, oh my gosh, why would you need all those? And I started talking to him, and he was like, all these have a different purpose, and all of them are used. I was like, really? Because I've been using 5/8 bolt draw tongs for everything.
Yeah.
And then I made another pair of tongs, and I loved it. And then, like, I made my first bottle opener, too, at Quad State with Mark Ling. And that was awesome. Then I saw, like, all the different hand tools you could use. I only had a chisel. I mean.
Yeah, bottle openers are cool because they have, depending on the bottle opener that you're making.
It was a horse head.
You could use 20 different tools to make a bottle
Yeah, I mean,
opener,
for the one that we made, there was eye punch, slot punch, nose punch, fullers. There's everything for it. And it was like, wow, there's a lot of different tools for everything. And it showed me how much better and more efficient I could make things. So I started making more tools.
Yeah.
I sucked at it.
We talked about it on the last podcast me and Nathan were on, but you know, when you're building tools or you're owning different chisels and punches and tongs and everything that you just said, you're buying capability. Mm-hmm. So your ability to make the horsehead bottle opener now compared to when you were in the forge by yourself and you had just gotten an anvil and you had just the one pair of tongs and maybe a punch, that horsehead did not look very good. In fact,
No, it looked like a moose.
I have one of your I have one of your first horse heads in my toolbox.
Really?
Yeah. And
That's embarrassing.
I do this thing where especially with young guys that I know, I collect bottle openers from you guys.
Yeah, you have no one to Noah's, I think.
I have one of Noah's. I have one of yours. I have a couple from other guys at Quad State, but especially with you and Noah, I have stuff from you guys because A, it's kind of cool that you guys have let me be part of your journey in doing something that you love, but B, because it's cool to have the horse head that you had just learned how to make horse heads, but you didn't have any tools to do it. And so you were making do. And then about 6 months later, you were selling that bottle opener with the copper rivets and
oh, yeah.
and I bought that, and to hold them next to each other and be like, okay, well, this is Corbin, but this is Corbin also.
Yeah.
You know, and someday I can present it to you in a shadow box and it can be a very, very emotional moment as I'm weak and feeble and, you know, you're a world-renowned blacksmith. Yeah, 4 months.
Huh?
Yeah, in 4 months.
Oh.
When I die.
Oh.
So you get hooked up. You decide that you fall in love with tools, right? Mm-hmm. You went to Texas.
Yep.
And your dad went with you.
That was my first big trip. Yeah.
And then what was your next big trip after that?
Pennsylvania. Well, Quad State, if you count that a big trip, that's only like 3 hours. But
that's
Pennsylvania.
For local guys like us, I would say it's not a long trip.
Yeah.
But it's a long trip because you go out on Tuesday and stay until Sunday. So,
but Pennsylvania was my next.
Okay. So
one.
Abana.
Yeah, Abana.
Okay. So we went to Abana in Johnstown.
Yeah.
And you went and Daddy stayed home.
Yeah. I rode with Paul.
So you rode with Paul
Kennedy. Yeah.
I was there with Cole, obviously. Mm-hmm. You had myself, you had Kevin, you had Paul, you had Rob,
Kevin's like a
you
second
had
dad.
Kurt,
Yep.
right? So all of us got calls from your dad
Yeah.
that were essentially like, hey, I'm not going, but if he needs smacked around, like,
Yeah.
go for it. So what I want to ask is, how did your dad get to the point, or I guess what friendships and what relationships were built to the point where your dad was comfortable allowing you to go to Urbana, you know, two states away? It was like a 5.5 hour drive.
It's at 8.5. Me and Paul had an 8.5.
Why did it take you 8.5 hours?
Well, Paul lives an hour away from here. Is it? It was an
All right.
It was an 8.5 hour drive.
I don't know why it took you guys so long. So, you know, how did you garner those relationships where you've been able to go on these? You know, you just got back from Louisiana. I know a bunch of other places that you've been. How did you garner those relationships to be able to experience these trips, essentially?
The first one I actually went on without Dad was the Knob Conference in Ohio. It was a little bit northern. It's northern Ohio with Kevin and Noah.
Okay.
And after that, he doesn't care, a couple hours away. And then after that, he was like, oh, wow.
Shout out Chris. Knob.
Oh, yeah. And he was like, okay, I see how this is going, I guess. And then he realized that all the IBA guys and all you guys were basically almost family to me now. And he was very comfortable with that, especially during Quad State. Like, a year before that, he wouldn't let me run around and just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And then that year, I was running around buying stuff I didn't need with like $100 that I had.
No.
Yeah.
Not you. One of my favorite things, this is a little bit off topic, but one of my favorite things that happened at Urbana, I was at the booth by myself because it was Blade Show, Urbana, and then I think Malin was very, very pregnant, and so you couldn't go anywhere. So we were kind of strapped for show attendees, and so we split up our groups or whatever. And you and Noah come to the tent, and you're like, "Hey, you haven't had a break in a while. You have to go to the bathroom or get some lunch." And I was like, "Yeah, I do. You know, like, you guys can watch the tent. If customers have questions, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Just make sure that, you know,
Yeah.
whatever, nobody steals the A33, which is really never a problem, but it's always in the back of your mind. Like, nobody steals stuff at these events, but it's always like, ooh, could happen." So I go to the bathroom, and by the time I go to the bathroom and come back, you and Noah have a little tailgate section wrapped around my tent with like $10 on this and $5 to $7 on this, and Noah's just sitting there, and people are walking by, and he's like, "You want to buy that for $7?" Like, they didn't stop and look at him or anything. They're literally just walking, and he's like, $7, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I could buy that for $7. That's fine, you know." And I'm like, "No, where'd you get that?" And he's like, "I just bought it for $3."
Yeah.
And you guys turned a profit by just going to my tent and being like cute little kids selling rulers, and like they're not even like real tools.
Yeah. I think at one point we had like a plastic caliper.
Yeah.
Calipers.
He had a plastic set of calipers and some little dome that he had told me. It looked like, you know, those things that you flip inside out and then they pop back up.
Oh, yeah.
Are you too young for that? Okay.
No. Yeah.
Okay. It looked like one of those, and I was like, "What is that?" And he was like, "Oh, it's like a specialty tool," and like described it to me. And I was like, "I'm pretty sure that's just like the cap of something." Like, I don't know if he sold that or not, but you guys, like, not only do you go to these events and enjoy yourself and go and buy things and partake in the community, but you guys have also very much picked up the spirit of tailgating at a young age,
For sure.
So
The first time I was at Sofa, I bought like a really nice big vise for like $20, and everybody was so mad at me. But he had like a $200 on it, and I ended up getting it for $20.
do you just not want to put it back in the trailer, or?
No, it was like the middle of Sofa. He just, I don't know why, but he just sold it to me for $20. I had $30, and he was like, "You know what? Here." I was like, "All right, cool."
Your guys' ability to haggle people down. It's fading fast. I hope you know in like 5 years you won't be able to do this at all. All right, so let's get back on track. So you're at Abana. You've gone on these trips. How did your dad get to the point where he was comfortable? Because maybe sneak preview. I've texted him. I've not read and see if he's texting back. But I do plan on having Kyle on the podcast and asking him about this as well. But how did you guys get to the point where Paul and Rob, in my opinion, are two of the most trustworthy human beings. Kurt, 100% is up there. These are guys that I would trust my life with. But I also understand from like a parent's perspective, letting your 15-year-old son travel with a bunch of guys who play with fire, and swing hammers, and people have gotten hurt,
including me.
You've gotten hurt in front of your dad, so it could very well happen not in front of your dad. And your dad's the safety guy, so. How did you guys get to that point? Was it just time
it's all those little trips. Like me and Rob, he took me to Don Reitzel's place for his hammering, and he also took me this year, but just because I didn't want to drive, and I also didn't have a vehicle at the time.
Maybe we should talk about that. I'm just kidding. We're not gonna flame you.
And in the Knob conference, and then me, Rob, and Dan, Paul couldn't go, Dan Borowski, we went down to Steve King's. It's all these little trips around Indiana and then Ohio and stuff. And then when I went to Pennsylvania, I didn't even tell my mom. I said, I told my mom the day of, and she's like, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah."
Did she think you were going to the Strawberry Festival still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess, I don't know. And then when she posted something, I guess, and she said, "I don't really feel comfortable with my kid going this far," but then me and Paul hugged each other after we got home and he left. And she said, "Well, that makes me feel a lot more comfortable with all these guys."
Yeah.
And
they're also fathers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which helps, I think.
I think all these little trips have gotten to the point where he lets me go on the big ones. And I guess he also saw that me and him on Texas, I could very well be capable. Because he went to Texas for work too. Mm-hmm. And he just
he happened to see that it was there.
Yeah, he dropped me off with Andrew and Mark and just let me do the class all day. And then he came back, and that's, yeah.
So, I know. I'm sorry, Evan. It was in a weird spot. Another thing that you are known for, which is, text on the podcast. That's
I was checking the time.
It's just texting on the podcast. Another thing that you're kind of known for, not necessarily around the shop, but when we go to shows, is you're a hard worker. You like that one? So you're a hard worker. You don't mind being told, "Hey, I need this thing done," or "I need that done." You don't mind listening to instruction. Is that something that you even think about as these guys are taking the time and spending time with me and teaching me and instructing me, and in that same matter of respect they're giving to me, I can return respect by helping clean up after we make breakfast? Or, taking you go on these trips and you have a trash bag, but then the dumpster's 3 miles away. Mm-hmm. Let's work on that fairgrounds. Every fairground ever that has one dumpster.
I've been at 1 a.m. I walked a mile away.
Yeah, they had 4 trash cans for the entire camp.
Every single one was outside the fence, and they were all locked.
So, yeah, we were locked inside of the fairgrounds. Could have been the start to a horror movie, but... So do you ever think about that?
I mean, I grew up being obviously told what to do by granddad and dad, and mom, and even my brother. And I mean, I've always tried to help and do what I was told. And it does play a factor on how much time they've given me and how much they've taught me. But I mean, I would do stuff for strangers if I had to,
Yeah. No, so 2 reasons. One of the reasons is because I think it's a cool introspective to understand how your parents and the people in your direct immediate life have become comfortable with, a bunch of strangers taking you different places. But I also think it's a weird perspective to see these people that are so okay with investing time with you, and you take you and Noah specifically, and you look at the investment that people have made in your direction, right?
Yeah.
I just a little bit lost my train of thought there, but they've made these investments into either your skill or the actual tools that you have. You know, let's not ignore the fact that people just show up and give you stuff because I haven't used this in 5 years, you know. And I'm not saying that to like oftentimes I'm making fun of you for it, but I'm not saying that this time for that. I'm saying it as like, I think it's cool that these guys recognize, oh, I have 2 of these, or I'm not going to use this for the next forever. Or if I do need to use it, I'll make another one. Here, you can have this. And they're okay with donating time and energy and monetary value to you. And I think that's a direct correlation to the amount of effort that you also put in. And I wanted to kind of point that out because I see a lot of young kids show up to, you know, Quad State, Urbana, and even Blade Show. And there's a lot of kids that we keep an eye on, or at least I keep an eye on Reddit, like on blacksmithing Reddit and knife making Reddits and stuff like that. And you'll get these parents that come in and post and they'll say like, how do I get my kid into blacksmithing? He wants to make a sword, you know, whatever. And it's always the flashy thing first. It's always like, you know, nobody ever comes in and it's like, I want to make some bolt jaw tongs.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like they want to make a sword. They want to make, you know, Thor's hammer. And all of these guys constantly respond with like, well, you got to buy him a forge and you got to buy him a couple pairs of tongs and this stuff. But in reality, it's like, how do I get involved with blacksmithing? It's like, be willing to do the work.
Yeah.
Show up to any blacksmith's house and say, hey man, I've got $20 if you can do a short class with me, and then clean up after the class.
99% of all of them will be like, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll teach you almost everything I know. But I've had, even like when I was 16, there's like 2 people that text me, like adults, and said, how did you get into it? My son wants to get into it. And like one of them was out of state, so I told him about Kurtz, but obviously they couldn't do it. But there's one that was down in Indy, and they never did show up to Kurtz, but they said, yeah, we'll try Kurtz out. And they never did show up. But I mean, I got Caden and Hayden, 2 of my best friends, into it. And they're not into it as far as me. Caden forges every night at his house.
His grandpa's bibs.
Yeah, yeah. And
they're so big.
Well,
they're so big. You do the same thing though. You got Papaw's bibs on sometimes too.
They're free, and I found them in my basement, and they're warm. So, but Kurt loaned him his first anvil. It's like a little 30-pound cast iron anvil.
Yeah.
And he also bought Kurt's pump forge, and he forges every night. And then Hayden, he comes over to my shop because we live like 2 minutes away from each other most nights, and they're not super into it, but they're just playing around with it, and they love it. And they both come to Kurt's, so that's good. But
well, Hayden specifically, this is weird talking about teenagers on the podcast. I feel like I should call their parents and make sure it's okay.
Yeah.
But Hayden specifically has also struck up a very good friendship within the IBA with Rob, right?
Oh, he's super.
Yeah.
Him and Rob are he
kindred spirits. So, you know, and I realize we're probably getting close to time, but you know, what I kind of wanted to touch on your interview is I want people to know who works at Cole, and I want people to know kind of what we do, why we do it. You're a very, 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 very good example of why we do what we do. Giving back to the community, being involved in the community, supporting other makers, and getting young people involved is really at the core what we want to do. And you are a major success story from that. And not only have you gotten involved, but even, you know, they're not that into it, but even if they're just hobbyists for the rest of their life, like it's still keeping a tradition going that's worth keeping going. And then I also kind of wanted to cover like how you stay involved, and the hard work is the answer. You can take classes for the rest of your life, but you're only going to get the curriculum. You're not going to get the little stuff that really matters if you're not willing to put the effort in and stay until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night at Kurt's and help them clean up. Yeah. That's when you hear the like, oh, I've got to move this from here to over there because I'm doing that tomorrow. And well, can I come help? Or why do you have to do that? You know, you get those pieces where like Kurt's not going to teach a lot of the stuff in a class that he's taught you.
Oh, absolutely. Like it's come to the point now that I used to always ask, do you need any help? Do you need any help? He called me the day before the rulesmith's hammering. He said, you want to come help me clean? And I said, absolutely. I'll be up there in 30 minutes. And I'm trying to go there every day. And from Urbana, when we went to, what's that place called? With the big hammers? CMA. After I saw all those 2,000 and 4,000 pound steam hammers, I really saw the potential of Kurt's little 600 pound steam hammer. And I've ran his 250 and his 500 pound little giant, and I've fallen in love with hammer work.
That 500 pound.
It's scary. I mean, it runs at the speed of like a 50 or 100 pound.
It's scary because it's fast, but also because it is so quiet. When I was over forging in the corner with Noah last time I was out there, and he like brushed past me a little bit, and then I kind of hear like a. I was like, oh, he must have turned that other forge on behind me, because there was the forge between where Gary was working and me and Noah. I was like, oh, he must have turned that one on.
Yeah.
And then you hear a power hammer going, and it's like, I was not prepared for that. And Noah's just like, he's watching it all happen, so he was prepared for it. Yeah. So like I jump, and he's just like steady, like doesn't care. But yeah, that hammer's super cool, but it is. I needed to make some noise.
Yeah, it's actually a 250, but beefed up.
Yeah.
It was used for making bomb shells in World War II.
Yep.
It was in his grandpa's shop.
One of one, right?
I think there might have been two of them. I'm not 1,000% sure. But it used to have a different anvil, and they machined that T anvil into it.
Oh, okay.
So it could have a flat die and stuff. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Well, you have anything else you want to say?
No.
All right. I think that would probably conclude it. I just want to say on the record for the first time, we're never nice to Corbin, ever. But you are a perfect example of why we do what we do. And our hard work is we don't expect anything in return, but we've gotten that in return from you. And I really do appreciate everything that you do around. So thank you for joining us.
Yep.
Fade me out, Evan. It's uncomfortable being nice. Now we've got Landon, who is our... Yep. He is it. So you do shipping, you do painting, you do induction forges. You have done assembly, and this week may do a little bit more as we're building out the KA section. You don't mind going out and filling up dumpsters. You don't mind sweeping. So whereas with most people, I can assign a cell and say that this guy is here, you kind of move around to wherever you need to be. You just, your main responsibilities when you come in every morning are going to be shipping and then going over and painting. But you also know there's going to be other stuff that goes along with that. So this is the guy that is responsible for packaging your presses, for all your small parcel orders, for your paint, and for building inductions, your coils. 12 tons is probably going to be the most common press he actually builds. But Landon has proven to us in 6 months, longer than that.
6 months on Saturday.
About 6 months? Okay, so 6 months. He has proven to us that we can show him something a couple times, and what I really like about Landon is he's willing to ask questions. So when we're going through something, he will collect your entire statement, and then at the end of what you're saying, ask you questions and kind of makes mental notes of what he needs to ask without interrupting you or derailing the conversation, which is something Corbin could learn from. So without further ado, let's get to know Landon. Landon, where are you from? Tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you happy in life? What's your stance on Geneva Convention? I'm just kidding.
Was that the one that ended genocide, or?
Geneva Convention was after World War II, I believe.
So pretty much.
Yeah, it kind of made it a bad thing.
It was good before that.
I don't think there was like a worldwide stance on it. So like the Geneva Convention was like, hey, we all feel like this is bad.
Right.
But individually, I feel like probably 99% of the population felt like it was bad.
Yeah, it was the outliers that were getting away with it.
Yeah. So where are you from? What do you do in your free time? Just give us a little bit a brief insight into the land of Landon.
I'm from Muncie originally.
Get a little closer to the mic.
Oh.
Just a little closer. The mic also moves. Cool. There you go.
I'm from Muncie originally. Lived there for a while. Went to college at Covenant College in Georgia and then transferred to Taylor University in Upland. I lived in Ohio after graduated. Worked in corrugated packaging, basically the office with cardboard instead of paper. And then worked at a zipline company in Wisconsin Dells. And then climbed cell phone towers for a year. And then didn't really have a job and then came here.
Okay.
Grew up liking the outdoors, going up to Wisconsin in the summers, camping, hiking, rock climbing. Did a bit of that. Don't do as much nowadays because I got a job. But
stupid employment always gets in what I love, in the way of what I love.
Yeah. Nowadays, get up, go to work, pay my taxes, like a good taxpayer,
Is that something that brings you joy? You get like really stoked on taxes?
Yeah, I mean, the more you work, the more you generate for the government. So, but I mean, law-abiding citizen, as best I can.
So you kind of skipped past it, but you said you grew up in Muncie and then you went and worked in the Dells in Wisconsin. A fun fact about that is David Delagardelle, who used to be employed by us and was Andy's best friend and is kind of a central figure in Coal Iron Works history and lore. I think he'd be really stoked that I referred to him as being part of lore. You grew up going to church with his parents, and so when you moved to Wisconsin, you actually lived with the Delagardelles in Noah's old bedroom, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And David also went to church there, not just his parents. But yeah, my dad and his dad were good friends. And then when they moved away, we would always go up and visit them in Wisconsin. And so after college, or during college, when I was working up in Wisconsin at the zipline business, I lived in their basement and got to hang out with them, and it was fun. So
Okay, and then you get married. You land in Westfield, and your wife has a roommate prior, obviously, to this moment.
she has one too. It's just me.
It's just you now. The other roommate was more fun. So your wife has a roommate, and that roommate ends up getting married to Logan,
Yep.
our engineer. And so we're looking for a new assembly person, and potentially at the time I didn't know if I was going to hire a shipping manager or if I was just going to take that over. And I was kind of weighing my options. We had a job offer out to Greg, but Greg was dragging his feet on coming and working. So Logan meets you, mentions, hey, we're looking, whatever. You throw up some interest, ask you to come in for an interview. And at the time, you were working sanding floors, and that is no fun for anyone. There's a lot of jobs that seem like they're hard work, but there's a lot that you get out of it, and they kind of give back to you spiritually and emotionally. And this is not one of them. So you end up getting hired here. Do you know what the sentence was that made me hire you? It was one sentence.
I don't remember. Do you remember?
Yes.
Frick. Yeah, what was it?
Okay, so I said, I'm hiring somebody to work in assembly, and they could potentially be moved around. This isn't a permanent position. It's permanent employment. This isn't temporary. It's not, whatever. But you might not always be working in assembly. What do you have to say about working in assembly, but also being adaptable to be able to move around the shop. And you said, well, in my free time, I build Legos, but I also have worked on cell phone towers. That's pretty adaptable. That's like that tells me that you have an idea of looking at something and seeing how something might function and be put together, which you are very good at kind of reverse engineering stuff and asking like, oh, is this how this works? You are typically correct in those questions. But then also you come with the experience of being 350 feet up in 30-degree weather and having to actually physically work, right? So there are a lot of jobs that, in fact, some of my hardest days are office days where I am in front of a computer answering emails, figuring out how to get something to a country that's hard to get to. South Africa apparently does not do a lot of import and export, so it ended up not working out, unfortunately, but I spent a lot of time going back and forth with carriers trying to figure out how to get a couple things to South Africa. And those days were more draining because I'm learning like import laws and like what commodities are allowed in and, you know, what have certain tariffs that make it not worth it. But there's also jobs that are physically demanding where you have to climb 350 feet up into the air and it's 10 degrees outside. What are some of the things that stick out to you about that job? Because that's a job that I think has the potential to be really cool, but also could just suck hard. So what are some of the things that stick out to you about that job, whether good or bad?
I would say the ability to execute perfection in a controlled environment. So, you know, on the sunny days, no wind, you know, doing the job. Like if you can do that well and you can put up with staying in the same headspace while you're, I guess the extremes I was exposed to was, I think it was like a -10 was the lowest actual temperature, but it feels like would have been down to, I don't know, -20-ish. And then the highest opportunity I got was 745. And so just like
feet, not degrees.
Yes.
Yeah. So we were just talking about temperature. You were not 745 degrees.
Facts. Yeah. And then I at least had more issues with the heat than the cold. But the cold just very like numbing, stable, whereas the heat was like you can't escape it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just being able to concentrate, get you know, like do the same degree of work, execution when on the good days and the bad days. So
that's what sticks out to you is it really impacted your ability to account for the elements but overcome them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not let the elements get in the way. I mean, you'd expect most people to do a crappy job when there's the outlying temperatures and extremes, but I would do my best to put the same work towards it.
Yeah. Well, and I see that in your work here as well. When, when you came and started, you got 2 days with Nathan?
It was like probably 2 hours.
2 hours with Nathan?
And then we went and picked up something from an auction for like 5 hours.
Yeah.
And then we came back and he left for like, 3 months.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you have too many kids. So you were more or less trained by Corbin. You had Corbin in the mornings and you had me in the afternoons, but I didn't have the ability to stop everything I was doing to come over and actually build stuff with you. So I was just there for questions, more or less.
Corbin was more, he would show me what to do. I would show him how to do it. Like I'd be like, nah, man.
So you're Corbin's first trainee.
We kind of trained each other, I guess.
Okay, all right.
I did train Greg.
Okay.
So, and he adapted his ways. There's about 13 tools you need, and now he uses at least 70 or 80 on a daily basis. So
Greg is the anti-Landon, where you were very here. Okay, so here's the thing about you is you're very very clutter free.
Surgical.
I'd avoid that. So everything is clean. Everything is clean. You keep your area swept. You keep any of the kitty litter we have to throw to clean up oil. You immediately sweep that up. Tools go back where they go, right? But you also love a good little hiding spot. You love a good little bucket of just stuff.
Yeah, like a junk collector, trash compactor, you know?
Yeah. So everywhere that you've been in the shop that you've been put, you have a little bucket of knickknacks. You're kind of like a I don't know, like a dragon sitting on his gold. And you've got little snacks and
I have spots you don't know about.
graham crackers. Oh, I believe that.
You could never find them.
I don't know if I believe
They're
that.
brick and mortar, sealed around.
If I really cared about it, I think I could find it.
Yeah.
But so you're very tidy, and then which I think is kind of healthy actually, is you allow one spot to be the like, I don't know where this is. It doesn't necessarily need a spot, so I can just throw it in this bucket. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that includes, your slides that you drive to work in because you change your shoes when you get here. That includes your wallet, your keys, your spare beanie for when you paint so that you don't mess up your church beanie, and it'll also have like...
It's more to protect the hair, not the actual beanie. But.
It'll also have like Loctite or a wrench that you only use every 3 or 4 days. Like you keep everything in one spot. Is that like in your mind? Is that because, like I said, it's like, this doesn't need to have a spot, but I need to know where it is. So all of those things that are kind of miscellaneous can go in this spot. Is that what helps keep you a little bit sane?
I think it's more the fact that I have like 5 areas that if assembly counts 5.
You
I
have
have
by footprint probably one of the largest working areas on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
You move more in a day-to-day basis than most people.
So like if I'm out for a day or something happens and someone needs to fill in, like the tools you need are right there in plain sight, and then the tool hacks are in my area.
Oh, okay, got it.
But I know where stuff is, but like that one day that I couldn't find the one wrench when we needed it, like perfectly.
Oh, the impact that you lost?
You saw me because I had a rag in my hand and the wrench in my hand.
Yes.
I put them both down and put the rag on top.
Yeah.
And later...
It took us like 2 hours to find it. Yeah.
So, but it was under the rag, so it was fine.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, just, like to keep things where they should be and the extras where they can't.
So, yeah, Greg is the opposite. Greg is so you put everything back where it goes and still somehow lose it sometimes. Greg just throws things blindly and his things accumulate and rise up. But if you go over and you're like, hey, Greg, I need a fine tip Sharpie. He's like, second drawer, it'll be underneath this crescent wrench. And then you pull it out and you're like, it's wild that you knew that's there, first of all, but I need a fine point. And he's like, oh, fine point. That's in the right-hand drawer. So he knows where everything is. Nothing ever gets lost.
But it's also like layers of tools, and then like you'll have, Monday's fast food lunch. You'll have Tuesday's tools, Tuesday's fast food lunch.
No, yeah, literally.
And so like Friday, you're screwed.
Yeah. And if anybody else has to go into his cell and work, you have to hope that it was a day that he had 30 minutes to put all his tools back the night before.
Right. You're like, what's this on my hand? It could be Loctite, or if it's after lunch, it's probably like Taco Bell mild sauce.
Yeah. The Diablo sauce that he puts on everything. But so what has been your favorite thing about coming to work at Cole? I forgot to ask Corbin that. We asked that to all of everybody that comes on the podcast.
He doesn't work here, so you didn't have to ask. Probably, I don't know. I like that there's always stuff to do. Like there's the running list of things to do, like always keeps running. Mm-hmm. And just lots of fun. There's lots of areas of, most people might not consider them talent when it comes to me, but I would consider talent. Just like carpentry, learning welding, I don't know much about the blacksmithing, but we'll work on that.
You
someday.
love making railroad spikes real long.
Free stuff.
Just making very long railroad spikes.
Yep. I drew one out to 32 inches.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yep.
You have taken every opportunity that we've given you to apply it directly to like growing. Like, so when we taught you how to weld for the 12 tons, we can teach you like, okay, so you pull this line or this bead, whatever, if we want to sound like welders, you pull this and then you make sure it doesn't look crappy and then you move on, right? We have the settings so that you get good penetration. This is how you do it. Camera go out? Nope. Okay. So you've taken that opportunity to ask questions. And because of that, you're now welding all of our dies as well. We are getting you involved in other areas because I truly believe that for every 30 minutes to an hour that we invest with you and spend time with you, teaching you, training you, explaining things to you, I'm going to get such a profound return on that because not only do you care about what we do here, I think you are bought in. I'm not saying the next thing to say that you don't care about us, but I think that you also very much so see it as a life skill and something that you can apply to yourself and you don't take that for granted. So that's one thing that I really, really enjoy about working with you is no matter what I show you or teach you or tell you, you're going to have questions. And you good enough is not good enough for Landon. There's always room for improvement. There's always things, you'll come up and say, hey, I kind of welded this a little bit fat. I checked, it still fits the press. Do you want me to cut it off and re-weld the tenon on? It's like, no, that weld is perfectly fine, But you want the perfect weld. You want to be able to weld like Josh, who's been doing it professionally for 5 years. In the 3 months you've been doing it, So I think having that expectation on yourself it's a good expectation to have of like, okay, if Josh can do it, I can do it. If Greg can do it, I can do it. In say in 2 years, maybe I need another machinist and you want to learn how to run programs. Well, then that opens up a whole new trade. And wow. Wow,
my bad.
Evan. So you wanna open up all these
2 days. We might need a new AV guy.
I might need a new producer for my podcast. Working here is ridiculous. The talent that I get. Anywho, so I really do. I do enjoy working with you for that aspect of you're constantly trying to improve yourself, do better, and you have a good mindset to give into the team. But a lot of times when people are team players, they forget that being a team player should also help grow you, right? So it's a little nice thing I can say to you. We're also not nice to Landon to his face, so that's the
Does this count as my review? Can we?
No, your review. When I do reviews, so I'm not kidding you. When I do reviews, I will take 1 day to do. Last year was 2, but I will take 1 day to do all of the reviews because that much like emotion is like really hard on me socially.
1 day you got to do it, and the rest.
So yeah, I knock it out, and then I need like 3 days to recover. I'm not good at like the like, hey bud, you're doing really great. Like I say thank you, right? And I don't think that I'm like a jerk when I come up and ask for things to be done, but I'm not great at the like, I don't know what that is. The emotions,
the personal ability that comes out when you have to talk to people about stuff like that.
Sure, the personal ability that comes out when I have to talk to people.
Yep.
All right,
yeah.
I love it, Landon.
I was gonna say, to follow up on what you're saying.
Yeah.
When it comes to work ethic, I think for me it comes down to like I don't necessarily view work as a waste of time, but if I don't do a good job or if it's not perfect to my standards, then it's a waste of my time.
Sure.
So
you're doing yourself a disservice by not giving the quality that you can.
Right. So even if it takes a little longer than it should, as long as it looks perfect, or perfect enough for me, then good.
Perfect enough for me. As long as it meets my standard, it's fine. Fine. All right. Well, I love it.
Are we out of time?
We're not out of time per se, but is there anything else that you want to cover, or you want to talk about, or tell the masses?
I like graham. Sorry, can we say that name? Is that?
I don't think graham crackers like Kleenex or
Right,
chapstick. I think
yeah.
graham cracker is the name of the actual.
I eat graham
product.
crackers every day. It's the cheapest thing to find at Costco.
We give Landon so much crap. I've seen him eat warm food maybe twice. He eats, I don't know, because you don't eat like a toddler, because most of the food you eat is like somewhat healthy. It's not like you're eating fruit snacks, and you eat like string cheese and fresh fruits and salami, big pepperonis.
Yeah, not pepperoni.
But you eat,
Pepperoni gives me heartburn.
what are the big slices that you eat then?
Salami.
Salami, okay.
It was on clearance. It was on sale at Meijer one time. I try to spend the least amount of money on food so I can, spend the rest on
Taxes.
taxes,
Yeah.
my mortgage, the government. Yeah,
Just
government.
supporting the government,
Yeah.
the completely ethical government.
The worst thing about a 1099 job is you can't give the government your money right away. You have to do it in tax season. So,
All right, Landon. Well, we're going to get out of here. We're going to go on with the rest of the podcast, but thank you for coming on. And if you guys like Landon, let us know, and we will do a longer form interview with him, and he will be the featured guest. So thanks so much for coming by, buddy. By coming by, it's 10 feet into the office. He didn't travel here.
we're good? Okay.
All right, that was a wonderful. Everybody clap for Landon and Corbin. It's been so long since we were on camera.
Should have changed places.
So it's only funny because you immediately said no when Evan said that we should do that,
Because it wasn't my idea.
and then immediately said that we should do that. So we're gonna wrap this up with one more quick question. That's just a funsy question, and then we will do another giveaway. I am feeling in a good mood. So, what is the strangest tool that you have ever used?
Professionally.
I don't know.
Mine's a hot glue gun. I can't tell if you're laughing because you know why I said it.
Nope.
So we were working on a project making a bench, and we had a friend come by
Oh, God.
and was convinced that we could use this industrial strength hot glue gun to get steel to stick to wood. And it ended up, I don't know if, did we ever, the bench did get finished because
The bench got finished. The hot glue did not help.
It took more time cleaning up the hot glue than it did to like make the bench and forge out the legs.
Shout out to Joe.
Yeah. So that is hands down the strangest thing I've ever been in a forge and like, how are we going to do this? And then we should hot glue it. That's my strangest tool.
I don't know. I think. I have a few. Had some fun castration tales, I could tell. I think
On a farm. He lives on a farm.
Yeah.
This is animals for ethical reasons.
Yeah. I think I don't know. I would say my favorite weird tool that I bought was the first mag drill I bought that we still use to this day. Hogan something 550 or something like that. It's a big Hogan mag drill. That was like up till that point I had only ever used hand drills.
Yeah. I love that I tore it all apart because I thought that the pigtail went in to the magnet first and then went up into the motor.
It doesn't.
And it doesn't. So I had to put a new pigtail on it, and I had it all pulled apart. And you were like, "Oh, he just pinched the wire." I was like, "I know, Nathan, but I have to rewire." And you were like, "Yeah, it's whatever." And I was like, "Oh." As soon as I pulled the bottom out, I was like, "Oh, that's all like independent." Okay, putting that back in. I hope that still works.
And it does. That's been a great investment. I paid $700 for that.
Yeah.
I don't know, 10 years ago. Yeah. I don't know. That's probably my answer. That's so weird.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have a weird
I don't have a
tool.
weird tool I've used because once you use a weird tool, it's not weird anymore. It's like this makes.
I'm trying to think of
total
like the
sense.
most. The 6 foot long adjustable wrench that we have to remove the nuts on the 120s.
That was pretty sweet.
That was terrible.
It still is.
It's a terrible tool to
I
use.
recently found it again, and I was excited just because I like having it near. I don't need it for anything.
No, you just want people to walk in and go, "Why would you
what is
ever
that?
need that?"
Yeah, it's like our 7 foot tongs.
Yeah, 8 foot tongs.
8 foot.
Those are fun.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. The contest for this week, Evan, go ahead and pull up the coffee mug with a sword on it. Nathan has probably never seen this either.
I haven't.
It's a coffee mug with a sword. It says Cole Ironworks. Power forging equipment. Guys, we specialize in power forging equipment for residential requirements. So you can run them in your garage. You can run them in your barn. You can run them in your kitchen while somebody's making dinner is something that somebody told me to my face one time. So to win this contest, what I need you to do is I need you to tag us in pictures of the first tool you made using any, not just ours, but any power forging equipment. First time you made tongs on a power hammer. First time that you punched an eye on a press. First time, bandsaw, I guess technically qualifies as a power tool. Angle grinder, power tool.
Is it power forging?
Yeah, it's
equipment?
fair. I did say power forging. Hey guys, the rules are made up and they don't matter. So tag us in something you made with power forging equipment, preferably the first thing you made, and you could win a coffee mug. And also next week, I will announce who won the t-shirt. I just realized that these are all going to be 2 weeks behind. So, all right, guys, have a good weekend.
Have a good.
And thanks for spending
good.
time with us
Signing
this
off.
week. Bye. So loud.
Oh man, I wasn't recording.